all of our guests, whether they're comfortable in it, the very first question is, I don't know about being on camera. That's the number one question everybody asks.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Mortgage Influencers, where we bring you professionals who share insight into the latest trends, tips, industry technology, and services to help you be a mortgage influencer in your mortgage business.
Okay, and we are live. So hello and welcome to another episode of Mortgage Influencers. Today is Wednesday, so that means we are streaming live with some really exciting guests today. I'm so excited to be able to jump into our conversation. I'm Ginger Bell. I have one of my co-hosts, Steve Richmond. Hello, Steve.
Hello, and happy Thanksgiving last week, everybody.
Right. Yeah, we missed, if you're watching this live, we missed last week. I hope everyone had a great Thanksgiving. I know I did. I actually just got back from Cabo about 12:30 this morning. So I'm running on a lot of caffeine today. Let's just put it that way. So Scott is busy doing some AI training today, and he'll be hopping on next week. But let me not waste any more time and introduce our guests, because I'm excited to have them on the show today. So we have Devin Dubuc and David Nguyen, and they host the podcast Real Estate Success Partner, and they're with Click and Close. So welcome, guys. We're glad to have you on today.
Thanks for having us here, Ginger. We're honored to be on the show.
Yeah. So you guys are streaming in live today from Dallas, Texas. And when we were in the green room, we were actually just talking. Steve had asked David specifically about what he thought about Dolly Parton in the halftime show. And that led us down to a discussion of really change and being able to be adaptable and things like that. And that leads me into a perfect segue as far as how you guys got started on your podcast. So, Devin, I'm going to let you go ahead and lead that off and share with our group what made you decide to start a podcast.
I love it. Well, Ginger, as you know, we're members of the Mortgage Marketing Animals and the Freedom Club. And David and I love to attend the events because there's always great takeaways there. And we were there in Nashville a year ago, right? Almost to date, right? Almost to date. And there was a presentation that Carl did, and you were there as well. You did some presentations on podcasting as well. And, David and I looked at each other and were like, we should do that. I think that's a great plan. And so we said, well, when do you want to do it? David, what we decide on?
That weekend,
next Friday.
Next Friday. Let's put a date on it.
Next Friday. Yeah. And why? I think you brought up a great question. Well, for us, we're all about connecting with other rock star people in this industry. We called our podcast a Real Estate Success Partner. I don't think it took us long to come up with that name. I think it was probably 5 minutes after we made the decision that we were going to do this thing. We were scouring GoDaddy for names that we could take, and we came up with that one. And the whole point of our podcast is to meet with other like-hearted, like-minded people in this industry and showcase what they're doing out there to create success for the families they serve and create success for themselves. So we also utilize this great opportunity to network with high-profile agents that we can eventually work together on and build relationships with. That was my motivation. David, how about you, brother?
Yeah, that Nashville, whenever they had the panel of people doing the podcast and was basically, how'd you get started? We just got a mic and just got started. So that was our inspiration. You got to just start.
This mic right here. Actually.
Yeah. Our first podcast was in Devin's kitchen with a mic and a camera. I think we're 40 or 50 episodes in now, a year into it. And I like to think we're a little bit better than that first day. But yeah, it's been great. It's been a huge connection for us, a huge benefit, not only to our organization, but also just to get our brand out there, and it resonates with our realtors. Our realtor partners love it. I mean, like when I say love it, they love it. I mean, who doesn't like 30 minutes of talking about themselves and how great they are, and edifying and honoring our partners, so I can't say enough good things about it. It's gone way beyond what I dreamt that first day.
Yeah.
And a couple of things, and you guys are really, really good about the consistency. And so I'm actually looking, so you're at 46 episodes right now. And so we're coming up on the 52. And what I love about you is you really didn't have all the pieces put in place. And so many people get into that, right? Where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I need to get this and I need to get that and I need to do this and I need to think about this. And it's like, no, let's just get started. I mean, let's just get started, figure it out. And as you said, you started, just in your kitchen. It's like, it doesn't have to be perfect, right? It just has to be started. And so now where you are, as far as a year into this, what's your biggest lesson that you've learned?
Oh, lesson. Well, first off, you're right on the money. It was ready, shoot, aim.
I love that. Yeah.
We're just going to make it happen, and at the end of the day, we definitely didn't know really anything, right? We basically were like, hey, what are we going to talk about? Well, I don't know. Let's talk about our daily success plan, right? What we do with the mortgage marketing animals. Who's going to interview who? Well, we'll interview each other, right? And where are we going to get guests? I don't know where we're going to get guests, but I think agents are a great idea, and from what we've heard, there's a great opportunity to utilize that as an ask. How did it transition to where it is, and what would we have liked to have known in the beginning? I think that's a great question, and I think probably the biggest transition for us, David, because we kind of jumped right in this thing and didn't have any problems with the actual communication aspect of it. The biggest things that we didn't know were, well, how do we get it out on the podcast network? Right? How do we make sure that we're broadcasting out there? We didn't know how to do that. Who's going to set up the website and the YouTube channel? And again, those were pieces that David and I are busy. We have normal work weeks, right? We have things that we're doing. When we going to shoot them? Those are definitely big questions. So we decided Friday was when we shoot it, because that's our Freedom Friday. So we don't typically book things on Friday. So we utilize that as an opportunity to work on our business. So we shoot ours on Friday from 1 to 3. We try to shoot 2 to 3 a week. Why 2 to 3 a week? What we found is if you shoot one and we've got to be out of town on a Friday, we don't have an episode. So we made sure that we were shooting 2 to 3 podcasts a week. That's definitely something that you should know, and do, just so you always have some in the reserve. And then, the other thing that we didn't know was, well, once we start inviting guests, how do we make sure that we have a process in line for getting them there, making sure it's completely transparent to them as to where they need to go, how they need to get there. Is it online? Are we doing it face to face? How are we going to follow up with them? Those are the pieces that we had to kind of put together on the fly. And I think we've done a great job with it. But those were the things that we didn't know. And there were definitely times where David and I were talking, we're like, man, we don't have any guests this week. What do we need to do? I don't know. Let's pick up the phone and make a phone call. Let's see if we can drum some up. Hey, we've got this process now of getting guests on the show. How do we make sure that they know when to show up? Oh, well, let's get our assistant involved and make sure that they're following up, setting it up on the calendar, and making sure that they're getting reminders. So, there were certainly some growing pains in there, but man, I think we adapted to it pretty quick. We'd sit down, David, right, and have, a 5-minute conversation in between our busy days. And I think we figured it out. Those are the things that I think were probably the biggest growing pains. David, what about you, brother?
Yeah, we go back to the beginning, and I laugh because those first couple of interviews was just interviewing each other. Hey, what are you doing? Hey, what's going on? How are you doing? Just getting really comfortable in front of a camera, in front of a mic. We're both in mortgages, so it's talking is not a big thing, but getting comfortable looking at yourself in front of a mic, I think it is a pretty big thing. You gotta just table it, and everybody, how you look is how you look. That's a big thing that people in front of the mic always says. I agree with you. I think where we're at today and is tremendous. I'm curious to see where we are a year from now, just because of how much we've learned in the last year and just the evolution of it. Like I said, for our business, it's bringing massive. Our results are and how I measure results is mortgage applications and leads, and I get those every single time I bring a guest on there. So it's moving the needle. It brings a deeper relationship into what we call our coffee appointments.
Well, and I think too, a lot of when you started out and your first episodes were talking about what you were doing in your business to be successful. And really the first thing and one of the most valuable things that you did when you decided in your podcast is, first of all, to decide who's our audience. And oftentimes people think a podcast needs to be directed towards consumers. And the greatest success in your podcast is it is really focused on real estate agents, your referral partners, and being able to bring value to them, because that's the whole key in everything that you're doing. So, your first podcast that you did talking about the daily success plan, which is part of your business. It's part of what you do. It's part of what, Carl and Mortgage Marketing Animals always teach, is doing that. So I think starting with something, something you're familiar with, sharing that is very helpful to agents. And then the next thing is that process. And we typically don't have guests back to back, but I love what these guys are doing so much, and they're having such great success with what they're doing with their podcast. Is next week they're going to be back on, and we're going to actually go through that process that they have, because it was a learning curve. And it was a matter of putting all those pieces together as who's going to do what, who's going to invite, how are we going to, email them, all of those things. Steve, go ahead.
Which begs this next question. So it's like, it's the process. We're going to learn how to do it. Something you both said going on was, at the beginning, we had to get comfortable getting in front of the mic and getting in front of the camera. But you're inviting guests on. How do you get them comfortable in front of the mic? How do you get them comfortable in front of the camera?
That's our secret sauce. Devin,
that's why I asked the question.
I'm his zing to his zang. We have I think that's our gift. We have a way of making people feel very comfortable with us. All of our guests, whether they're comfortable in it, the very first question is, I don't know about being on camera. That's the number one question everybody asks. And the next question is, hey, can you give me a list of questions that that I can rehearse? And we tell everybody the same thing. I promise you're going to have fun. We don't like to give a list of questions because we have no idea. Devin and I are very spontaneous. Everything is live in whatever is created up here in our heads. Whatever pops in our head at that moment in time is what we go with. And we have a very great way of making people feel very comfortable with the process. In fact, I don't think we've ever had a guest at the end of it go, man, that was fun. Can I come back? That's usually, I didn't expect to have so much fun. They forget the camera's on them because we tell them, hey, once it starts, we're just having a conversation. So if it's live, we're turning to them and talking to them and not looking at the camera. If it's in the camera, it just becomes very conversational. It's no different than, having Thanksgiving with the family or talking to a close friend.
But you talk about how I was going to touch on that real quick. He talks about how spontaneous it is. It is spontaneous, but there is a process.
Yes.
And I'm going to throw that out there, Steve, because that's important to talk about. The other thing is us getting comfortable on camera. What's funny is we shot our first podcast. We're like, we'll do a dry run and see how this goes. And we'll record about 6 minutes and stop. And we recorded it, and it was like, that was pretty good. I think we'll just run with that one. That was episode number 1. It was one take. So we felt good enough about the first one that we ran with it. What is the process for the customer or for the agents that we bring on? This is important. We do a pre-podcast call. And the reason we do the pre-podcast call is because, like David said, a lot of the times when we reach out and we say, hey, we're a student of success and we would love to hear your story, we've got a podcast that we do. Would you be interested in jumping on a 15-minute call to get on the podcast, right? That's not necessarily a vetting process for them. We've already vetted them. We know that we want to have a podcast with them. It's for them to vet why this is going to be fun and comfortable. And so in that pre-podcast call, it's a 15-minute call. We actually talk to them about, the first thing we say is, hey, look, the first thing we want you to know is this is not hard copy. We're here to make you look great. That's what it's all about. We want to talk about how amazing you are. And the questions we're going to ask are going to be very conversational like. Notice that I don't wear anything special on the podcast. I'm not wearing a three-piece suit because I want you to feel comfortable. When we get on the show with you, I want you to feel like you're having a conversation about what you do every day, which is what you do every day, with a couple of great friends that you've known for a long time. That's what this is all about. And we also tell them, hey, if there are any errors, we don't shoot ours live like this one right now, right? So we can always go back and edit that. But guess what? We never have to do. We don't have to. We don't have to because these things go really, really well and they're very conversational like. But you're correct. There is the fear, Steve, of, ooh, can I be on this show, man? This is kind of scary. And David and I get on that 15-minute call and we bounce things off of each other. And then there's always a question that David will ask. We won't share it here. We'll wait for next week. But we say, hey, that's the kind of stuff we're going to ask you here. And man, let me tell you something. They open right up. And normally after the pre-podcast call, they're actually saying, man, I think this is going to be fun. They say it before we actually get on the call. You're like, I was really nervous. I'm not even nervous. Then we get some of these guys and gals that do this stuff all the time. They're like, let's go. Come on. Let's turn this camera on. So I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you. Ginger, I think you had a question though.
Well, I want in the process of the vetting. So first of all, how are you deciding on here's the list of who we want to have? Do you probably already have a list? It's part of what your daily success plan is. And so what's part of that criteria? What are you looking for?
So for me, when we first started it, as part of the marketing animals, our list consists of realtor relationships, tilapias, tunas, and whales. It has to do with how many buy sides they do on a annual basis. Well, in the beginning, if anybody was on that list, I was bringing them on there. Well, as our podcast gets more popular and busy, we've actually gone upstream. Now I only bring tunas and whales onto the podcast, which, wow, again, someone that's doing 8 buy sides compared to someone that's doing 16, you just doubled the production. So those are the metrics that I kind of look at to get them on the podcast. For me, I actually lead with my coffee appointments with the podcast and with the real-time referral program. So it's funny, one of the things that Marketing Animal teaches us whenever we're calling to talk to new agents on our coffee appointment is, we're calling to edify and honor them. Well, there's a lot of resistance, in this market right now. Realtors are especially the big time realtors are being targeted by loan officers all across the country. They're getting 2 to 3 calls a day, not a week, a day. What's going to separate you from everybody else? I'll share you a great story that I kind of share with Devin. And if I'm getting it, that means everybody else is getting it. As soon as I say, hey, we got a networking call today. Oh, another loan officer. And I always laugh. I go, yeah, even though I'm a loan officer, that's actually not what I do these days. So what do you mean? I go, it seems like for the last year, all I do is market and generate leads. What do you mean? Oh, that's, let me tell you a little bit what I do. I've been generating leads for my realtor relationships, and I like to market them in platforms that they never even thought about. Hey, do you do any Facebook advertisement? Do you do any YouTube? Do you do any? And then we totally get away from doing loans, and all I'm talking about is marketing and generating leads. And all of a sudden it gets into, my 15 or 30-minute coffee appointments is all about that. And if they're a tuna or a whale, hey, you know what? I think you'd be great on a podcast. I'd love to get you on there to talk more about how we can put your brand out there at no cost to you. I don't want to get into it because next week we're going to talk about the sizzle, but we do stuff like Facebook marketing, and we pay for that as part of our podcast campaigns.
To get in front of their sphere.
Yeah, to get in front of their sphere. So that's
and get them in front of our sphere. Yeah.
So it's that's you ask what my target audience is. That's what I use for our target audience.
And again, it's already a part of what you do. And I know, David, you do a lot of training for agents. And so I know that you probably weave that in there as well, right?
Absolutely. Again, it's just Again, we can show them how to do it. A lot of times, we have people that get on the podcast and go, you know what, I was going to start my own podcast. How many times have we heard that, Devin? Hey, what a
We've
great
actually helped
platform.
some of them start podcasts.
We have used we started some of our podcasts. So, it's just, coming from a place of giving, and really wanting to know how we can help them. Like I said, it's if you got a million people talking about loans and I'm not talking about loans, I'm talking about marketing and leads, it's a different conversation. I'm not like every other loan officer that's targeting them, So my conversations is very different.
Yep. And leading with that is so important. So next week, guys, we're going to get into, David, I love you said the sizzle. And so that's why we're doing 2 parts, because I think oftentimes when people think about, getting started on a podcast, there's always, the first questions as far as, how do I get started? What do I do? But it's not a matter of getting started. It's a matter of sticking with it, getting started, sticking with it, and then what you do with it afterwards. So before I kind of tee up for some of that, we've been talking about inviting agents. Have you ever had anyone say no?
Yes.
Not for scheduling purposes. I understand if they say no because, oh my gosh, I have something that day.
Yeah.
But no, I don't want to be on it.
Of course. I have agents all the time that say, no, that's not for me. No worries.
Yeah.
Again, at the end of the day, I'm not going to force someone or I always come back to them. I've had people say no, and then during my 12-week contact, after we build a little bit more rapport, come back and say, "Hey, you sure you don't want to be on a podcast? Why don't you jump on our pre-podcast interview to see if you even want to be on the podcast?" That's what's great about they don't just jump on the podcast. Remember, we have a pre-podcast planning that's 15 minutes to see if this is something you even want to do. We've yet to have someone on the pre-podcast that didn't complete the podcast.
Yeah.
So really it's a conversation, too. Right? I mean, it's just, it's an opportunity to open a door.
Yes.
Have a different conversation. And even if they say no, it's like, hey, you know what? Let me ask you why. So it's getting through those objections. And a lot of it is fear. We think of real estate agents as being so savvy at marketing. And for me, I've been learning in myself too, as they have as many questions, fears about doing videos, about marketing, as what you may have. And so being able to break that down a little bit is so important. And it's continuing that conversation. So I'm going to hop in real quick. We have a couple of questions. First of all, David, yes, we are recording this, and if you want to watch all of our episodes on Mortgage Influencers, you can go to www.mortgageinfluencers.com. We stream live onto Facebook, and then we put the recording out the next week, so you can go and watch a copy of that. And that's why we do that, is to be able to have you go back and see different ones.
But it's not emailed to each person. You have to make that effort to go and find it in one of those 2 places.
Yeah, we do. So on a backside, we do email out a weekly episode. It's part of our Friday email that goes out. So if you're on our distribution list, then yes, we will send it out. So if you want to get onto the distribution list, go on to mortgageinfluencers.com and you can register there, and then we'll send that out to you. So the next question we have, is this is from Daniel in Texas. Is it typical for a lot of realtor offices to have in-house mortgage professionals? I guess he's saying, it looks like Daniel's in New Jersey. He says it's a huge barrier in many real estate offices. So what are you seeing and how do you overcome that?
Oh, I love that, because
can I jump on this real quick, David? I actually have a very specific example, and you weren't there for this one because you happened to be on vacation that week. We actually did a skit behind it. This is pretty funny. We actually did a podcast in an office where they had an in-house lender in their office, and the loan officer stopped by to check in and see what we were doing there. Right.
Nice.
So at the end of the day, Sure, we definitely have in-house lenders that work out of real estate offices, but at the end of the day, they're not always getting the job done. And these high-profile agents, they want to work with the people that they know are going to get things done. And one of the things that we do is we say, "Hey, look, let us come in, let us do a podcast with you. We're going to put this out on all the podcast networks. We're going to put this out on social media. We're going to do paid ads behind it. In addition to that, we're going to give you all the footage, and we're going to make you look great." Now you can take that and you can put that out to your sphere of influence. And let me tell you something, they love that stuff. And when they get to the part where we're talking to the podcast and we get involved in any part of what we're doing, if they didn't already know, they'll talk on the podcast about the negative aspects of the lender that they have in house today and what they're not providing to them. Right. So at the end of the day, we certainly have in-house lenders in Texas, but it doesn't change the fact that the realtors will still do business with other partners if they're not getting the service they need from that in-house lender.
Yep. David, I'll let you hop in too.
Yeah, of course. At the end of the day, what I find at most offices that have in-house lender is the majority of the transactions that go through that office is not with the in-house lender. If you actually survey that, you would be surprised how many people don't. I don't know if it's because the in-house lender thinks they have a captive audience and they don't have to hunt and they're not as aggressive. I don't know the answers to that. What I do know is, in my experience, most of the in-house lenders that I come across get very little of the transactions that go through that office.
If they get 20%, that's
I'd be shocked.
Big
yes.
number.
That's right.
Agreed.
Well, and oftentimes that excuse is just that, an excuse to get you off of the phone because they are getting all those other calls. So it is the same thing for them. I always say it's like, I'll go into a department store and I'm a very specific shopper. It's like, I know exactly what I'm looking for. But as soon as I walk in, salesperson walks up, "Can I help you?" I say no, because I want to look myself. It's like, that's just an automatic response, which is so crazy. And it's the same thing for them. It's like, "Yeah, we have an in-house lender." Of course you do. I would expect that you would have an in-house lender. But then how you overcome that. And so whether it's, setting up a meeting, saying the reason I'm calling is, you're on the top of the list for us as someone who has an amazing, background, reputation in your industry. And so I always like to know amazing people, and those, amazing agents are who we invite onto our Real Estate Success Partner podcast. That's why I'm calling you. I didn't want to talk about your in-house lender. I want to talk about you.
Well, that's we use the marketing analyst response, Ginger, and it's very close to what you just said. It's of course you do. All great agents have great lenders, right? That's not actually why I'm calling you. At the end of the day, I've seen what you're doing. You're having amazing success, and I'd love to hear that story, right? Hey, worst case scenario, right? You meet another friend in the industry and you share some ideas and have amazing results, with taking those ideas. Best case scenario, you throw me on the bench and maybe we do some business from time to time. How's Thursday sound?
Yep. That's it. A no doesn't mean no.
Just means not today.
It just means not now. Or maybe even not now. It's like, it just means you got to work a little bit harder. You have to. And the thing of it is, and this is what I love about both of you, is just like Dolly Parton, right? It's like at 77, she's not afraid to get into a Dallas Cowboy cheerleader costume, right? And to be able to do something different. And that's what I love about both of you. It's like, hey, let's do something different. Don't be like everyone else. Be something different. And agents are looking for that. They respect that. Everybody's looking for business, no matter what you're doing. So to help them do that.
And we talk about this all the time, is what you two are bringing to the table is authenticity. So we have lots of people that talk about, oh, look at this email campaign that goes through the AI and da-da-da-da-da. And those things are wonderful, and there is a place for that, but there's still, hi, I'm sitting down face to face to do this podcast with you. That's different.
Yeah. And you're helping them build their business. You're building the relationship. You're helping them build their business. And that's the key. And the other thing is, and this is what a lot of people don't realize, you're inviting agents on, right? So your audience is real estate agents. And so people think, well, if I'm having other agents on, are other agents going to watch it? Absolutely. 100% they are, right? Why? Because they want to see what other successful agents are doing, which goes back to the name, right? Real estate success partner. It's about that, showcasing.
It is.
Okay, so I'm not seeing other questions coming in, but I'm going to leave with this because we're at the top of the hour. And so the little teaser is, so my t-shirt, you can see. So this is their logo, and Devin had that design. It has a little hat on it. They're all about hats. That's what I love about them. Always have a hat on. Devin has tons of different hats that he wears. And so that's part of their logo. This was a t-shirt that was sent to me. I was in Dallas. They invited me onto their podcast. And so I recorded with them. And their assistant sent me an email. Hey, what size t-shirt do you wear? And I got the t-shirt. I'm going to post onto our Facebook group, the front and the back, and I made a video about it too. So I'll post that. So got the t-shirt in the mail. It's like, oh my gosh, that is so fantastic, because now you're sending that follow-up, right? So again, we talked about it's not just about doing it, it's about the follow-up. And that's what we're going to talk about next week, because the t-shirts, I'm going to leave you with a little cliffhanger. It's not just the logo on the front. And next week, I'm going to have them share with you how they come up with the idea, what is on the back of the t-shirt, and then all of the things they do as far as leveraging. So you guys, thank you so much for hopping on. I truly appreciate it and always love a conversation with you. And so make sure you tune in next week, same time, same place. We're at 1:30 p.m. Eastern time. You can register at mortgageinfluencers.com. Follow us on our Facebook group. And Devin and David, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us, and we'll wear the full gear next week just to make it fun. So yeah, we'll come decked out. We'll showcase what you're talking about, and we've got a new thing we're adding to that t-shirt too. So we'll talk about that.
I can't wait for that. And if you want to check out their podcast, guys, go to realestatesuccesspartner.com and you can see all of their episodes there. So if you want to see how to do a podcast and get some ideas, that's a great place to go. So thanks, guys. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Wednesday.
Bye, guys.